Okay. And that's just a judge making sure that the witness understood that she is not to talk to anybody, including the attorneys, about this particular case. But again, that was Diana Smith. And what was interesting about this particular showcase of pictures in this case are a lot of these pictures, a lot of these jurors said they've seen in the media, particularly those shots of George Zimmerman and those injuries to the back of his head. So it's interesting to see maybe how the jurors might responding to seeing all of the pictures of George Zimmerman and the crime scene investigation. Let's bring in right now News 13 legal analyst Mark NeJame, who is standing by, and talk to me about what did you see was a significance of that testimony.
Well, a lot of it is simply the crime scene technician having to get into evidence. Some of these are, for lack of a better term, not the more exciting parts of a trial. You have to have your chain of custody in order to get them into evidence. You have to have the chain of custody, who touched what, who saw what, and then put it into evidence. So much of this is a predicate for that. I think some of the bigger questions that people are asking that was alluded to earlier, when I think before we went to a break, was how graphic are some of these pictures? How much of an impact will it have on the jurors? Well, none of these pictures, even of a deceased young 17-year-old who's been killed through a shot in the heart, is determined by the law to be especially gruesome or especially inflammatory. These are going to be seen pretty much in every homicide case. So although they're bothersome and disturbing because, of course, you're dealing with the death of a young man, nevertheless, these are not the type of pictures. You didn't even hear an objection from the defense because these are routine in a homicide trial. And the jurors are going to see them, they're going to evaluate them, and it's a necessary part of the trial because it helps build the state's evidence, which is, of course, what they need to do.
It seems like a lot of the line of questioning is preparing for maybe what the defense may come back with, Mark, regarding about if whether or not this evidence was handled properly. And we've seen that a lot in other murder cases as well, about whether or not law enforcement did their job in handling that evidence.
Yes, but you're not hearing a lot of objections. If, in fact, they object to a chain of custody that it shouldn't be properly put in, that's one thing. But here, some of these have been stipulated to. They're being admitted without objection. So a lot of that could come up if, in fact, it's not handled properly. But remember, if it's not put in properly, it's not admissible. And if it's not admissible, then the state can't prove its case. So although some of this is not necessarily the most exciting as far as you're not getting any of the passion or the drama of a trial, it's absolutely necessary for the state in order to put these matters into evidence so that they can have a case to present to the jury. And without the proper chain of evidence, then it doesn't get in. And some people say, well, why not? It's just a gun. We all know that the gun was used. We all know, that these were the clothing. Well, we don't always know that. History sadly suggests that sometimes things are tampered with. We find out that a lot of times with DNA that the wrong person's been arrested or that the right person has been missed. So all of these things are very, very important. And when you get into something like the gun, well, if the gun needed to be examined and it turned out that it was owned by somebody else or somebody's fingerprints were on it, now not so relevant in this case, but those are all issues that are absolutely essential to many cases, and it's just being done in the proper order. And so this will all be coming through these basic crime scene technicians and all, and then the rest of it they'll be alluded to. There'll be exhibits that are in trial, and they'll be talked about and referenced by both parties throughout the rest of the case.
Very much so. You have to assume there, Mark, that these attorneys have been looking over this evidence back, forward, turned around to see what might have been missed and what might be able to come up in trial. We will hear more about that, I'm sure, during the duration of this. We'll be back with you more in just a little bit, Mark. But right now, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more coverage of the George Zimmerman trial.